This is the short and sweet version of the project management overview for Chief Architect X17. The reason I say it's the short and sweet because we're still in beta and I'm fairly confident. In fact, I'd say I'm like 100% confident that we're going to get some updates to this system for the public release of X17. In the meantime, I also want this video to kind of focus mainly on people that are working with other collaborators. So whether you're working inter-office or with a subcontractor or something like that, how do we share files and still use project management? And why would you even want to use project management? For me, I feel like this is a really great stepping stone to a future version of cloud where it's all integrated and sharing is authorized by your account, something like that. But in the meantime, there are still some really cool benefits of working in project management that make it kind of unique. And the main part about that is if you want to use project management, I'd say the main advantage of using it is really building out your template files. Okay. And what I mean by that is in project management, it's very easy to link up multiple different pages that can be very dynamic in a way that can handle many use cases, many different types of projects. And so that your files are all there and easy to kind of establish your views in layout. That's a big part of it for me. So that's why I like to use project management. If you don't have it turned on and you forgot how you even turned it off because it comes kind of preloaded with it turned on, that's going to be your edit preferences menu. And I'll just show my screen right now. Edit preferences, and then we'll get into the sidebar here. That's project management, and you'd say use Chief Architect project management. Now I'm going to say right off the bat, what does it do when we turn that on or off? When we turn it off and it's already on, what it's going to do is it's going to take all of your assets that it has stored on your machine in locations that aren't really that easy to find, and your files are kind of in some kind of encrypted format. It will take those, extract those, and put those in wherever you have your data folder. So in your folders panel here, after you turn off project management, this particular page is going to change quite a bit, and you're going to see where your data folders are stored, and some of this information is going to change as well. So that's that part of things. So what happens is it pulls those files out of where it has them on your machine, which, by the way, it's not an easy way to back those files up. If you're trying to back those up outside of Chief onto some kind of cloud service, it's not very easy to back up the root project files. That would be a very advanced thing. I could show you how to do it, where it would be non-destructive, where we're not affecting files that are being actively worked on, but that would be a very advanced thing to do. Let's just assume that we're keeping project management on. Then how do we ensure that we have some kind of backup, so that we feel like our files are safe? Well, we have a couple of different methods that are already in place and are automatic. One is that in file management, our autosave is still working. Our archives are still working. Okay, so even though you might not think that this is doing anything, this is still saving to wherever your default data directory is. So you can go in there and find your latest archives. Now there's a couple of things that we could set up here. I personally want mine to be set to previous save. What that means to me is that when I hit Control S on my machine, Command S on some Mac, that's going to save my file as I'm working on it. Well, that's also creating an archive file as well, a backup. And that way, if I go forward and save again and I screw something up, it's really easy for me to go back to that previous save point. So that's kind of nice. You can change this on the fly. So if you're working on something that you're worried about messing up and for some reason you're not just making a backup anyways, you can kind of change this on the fly and change this to the previous save mode. But I don't know. I'm not sure that there's much of a use case there. And then we get an auto archive warning for maximum files. This really does contribute to some file bloat over time, so you might set this down a little lower. This is totally up to your risk tolerance. I want to state that very clearly in this video. You really do need to assess your own risk for losing data. I'm a really fast technician. It doesn't matter to me if I lose a couple hours of data if the process of backing up kind of takes up more than a couple hours over a period of time. So I want to do kind of this balance of doing a little bit of backup, and then I'm just going to be okay if I for some reason lose a little bit of data. And then this last part here, autocopy files, this does not matter in a project management mode. We are no longer copying external based files into our root data directory. What this specifically was that if we're bringing in some object and it has some textures involved in this object, or we're bringing in materials and we're creating a texture, then it was going to copy it to your root textures folder so that it already existed in the data folder that Chief looks for in case you were moving material files around on your machine later on and you broke links to, say, material files. Now, the big question is why project management? Why was this implemented? I see this a lot on our Chief Architect boards and Facebook groups, etc. Who asked for this? And you may have not asked for it deliberately in a concise way, but it is one of the largest tech support calls that Chief Architect receives. And this is that when we're sharing files, we have broken links because maybe we renamed a file, right? And then that broke the link to layout from plan, or we shared something and it didn't include all the texture files, and now Chief doesn't have the textures and your other user can't see those materials that you put up in your plan. So this was one of the largest calls, and on top of that, another call that kept happening is people just losing data or having things disappear or not work anymore. And that's because out of the box, Chief Architect was installed, especially on a PC, on a OneDrive drive if you chose to back up your machine. So unbeknownst to you, your core data files from Chief Architect were getting overwritten or synced up through OneDrive. I have a whole blog on that. You can go check that out on my website. I suggest that you get it off of OneDrive as of 2025. That is just, it's become a really terrible service and it causes a lot of conflicted copies and other issues. So if you haven't experienced that, I think that you're a unique user in that regard. There's a lot of people out there that experience a lot of problems, data drive problems, especially when they're sharing across to other machines or other users. Now, let's get into how do we share across to other machines and other users, and how do we even go about navigating in terms of this new project browser? I'd say the number one trick for me is instead of setting up your templates the way we used to, which is, point Chief Architect in preferences to what our template file is. What I like to do is, especially for my Pro Plan template, is that I have them as a separate project. And you can see here, this is my Pro Plan. It's in my projects directory. It's not in the common files or common documents. Let me just clear this folder filter. So we can see here, plan and layout templates. I do have some stuff in here, but I probably will never use them. The only time I use anything in here is to just do a little bit of testing in the default residential templates from Chief Architect. And I have some stuff in common documents just as kind of an easy way to back some things up or make, it's just some copies that are nice to refer back to at times if you need to go see if you change something and need to go fix it in a template file. But everything else here is in my root projects directory. And so I like to add a little, we're calling them folder tags right now. They need to be renamed because it's kind of a problem. You see this new folder here, and you might get confused by folders and then new folder here. So this is very redundant. I know that this is going to change because this is very, very confusing, these two new folders side by side. So this is more like a folder tag, and it creates, it's not even a directory, but it's a high level association or grouping of your files. So your files can be, have multiple of these folder tags applied to it, right? So think of it in that way. It's just a way of almost like if you have a Gmail account, this would be considered labels. So labels don't actually contain folders within them, but it's an association with something that you've given this moniker, if you will, or just this tag. So it's a little bit different from our tags and libraries, but mostly similar operation there. So it's nice to be able to tag things, and the way I would consider using this in the project term is, one is I'm going to make a copy of my template. This is how we retain very complicated links that we might have established. So I make a copy, and let me just back up a little bit here. Make a copy. And from there, you get to rename whatever you like. Now, you don't need to rename every file within this folder. You can, but I'll tell you why it might be nice that you don't. It's more work and you don't necessarily need to do it. So here, I'm going to just make this a test project. And what we'll see is if I open up my new plan from this test project and then I close this down, if you are accustomed to going into the file menu and looking at your recent documents, what you'll see here is we get the project heading. Even though these are named the same thing, we get the project heading separate from, I could see test project separate from my pro plan template. So that part's really nice. So I don't necessarily need to name the files within. Makes it really easy. The other thing that I did in my template, and this might be a little bit advanced for some people, but I've went ahead and put a little macro in here. One of the built-in system macros to let me know this is the project I'm working on, even because we've got a new tab up here and it just shows that new plan. And so here, I don't necessarily know that this is what's open if I'm just looking at the top tab and looking at my screen. So there I have it listed as test project is what's open. The next thing that you'll see here is on the right hand side, there's a little check mark here, which is indicating that this is the file that's open right now. So another couple of ways to just let you know how something is open. Now, what's really fun about this particular project management mode method is that my views are already being sent. And there's a little trick here. In a remodel workflow, I'm going to go ahead and draw my remodel. I like to do it in the new plan file, and I'll show you exactly why. It's a particular workflow that works very well. Here is what I would consider my as-built. I've drawn my walls in, and I've finished. I'm off the job, and I finally finished my as-built. This is the as-built, and I want to start working on the new. Well, if I want to retain my links and not have to do any kind of complicated relinking, what I can do is come over here. Here's my as-built. This view is already sent to layout, okay? It already has views to layout. So if I want to replace this plan, because this is not what I drew my as-built in, I'd have to somehow copy all the work that I just did in the new plan. I can replace with. And it's going to warn me that, hey, this view is already being linked to a couple layout files. Okay. I still want to replace it. And then it lets me target, and I'm going to find that new plan that I'm working on right now, which is my new tab that's open right now. And the only reason this shows up in common documents shows up is because this only works if both plans are in the same project file. Okay. So I target my new plan, I say yes, and now this did not change. This is not a save as. That's why it's different from a replace with, okay? And so I get to just come in here, draw on my new walls, start working on my new plan, whatever this is. Oh, that's a funny one. And then when I open up my layout, these views are already established. There you go. It's creating my plot plan. This is for my proposed. I've got my, this is stuff that's built into mine, but my lot analysis is all going. Here's my existing. There's my new on the next page. Here's my window order overview that I got to kind of fix and get on the page. You can see my Windows schedules being built out. I have to manually update my elevation views, but these are already here and established. So all of my views across all the pages are already linked and set. And so I just get to start drawing. And by the time I'm kind of done doing a few concepts, I probably have 75% of my projects already finished, as you can see here. So very cool to just establish these things as we go. So that's one of the really main benefits of using the project browser is keeping those links and just keeping in flow. Yes, you can open up layout and still relink those files the way we used to do that, right? But it's even more work if you want to store many different types of layout files and all have them sent. And what I mean by that is if I open up my ANSI B layout, guess what? As I scroll through here, that project's still being sent here. Even though it's at a gross scale, this is already showing up. It's already being scaled. Everything's set up. Views are already being sent. Schedules are being established. So you can have multiple layouts where everything's being sent here all at once. So that part's really, really nice. Now let's get to talking about versioning and how do we deal with a team and how do we collaborate with a team and what are the best methods for this. Here's kind of where project management falls a little bit for me, because this takes a little bit of a process, and it's a very different process than what you would have had to do before in some ways. And that is that we're going to share a CAproject file. And so I'm going to take this test project here, and let me just close down all my views. Not that I need to, but close out down all the views. And I'll just go right click on my project heading itself right here. There's a few options here, and some of these options are going to seem really confusing, okay? But what I'm going to do is export that project file. It will allow us, if you want to, if there's some things that you're storing in here, which, by the way, we can store other things in here. I want you to notice something. Notice that I have CSV files in here. Notice that I have non-Chief Architect style files in here, and like a text file, okay? What this means is we can store some files in here. Maybe you have details, maybe you just have references that you want to be able to open up really easily. Maybe you have additional files that you want to give your other designer or something like that. So maybe there's a spec sheet that you've been working on, and now you want to give them a version of that spec sheet, okay? You can import this into the project file and then export whatever you want from the project level here. All right, let me hit cancel real quick. This is a real simple process. I could right click and import files, and I can then go target something on my machine like a PDF or some image, something like this. So there we go. That brings it into this machine, and because we have subfolders now, you might make a new folder within here that says assets or who knows what. And then what we have in project management now is, or the project browser now, is we get to just drag and drop, and that part's really nice. So drag and drop that into assets. You can even drag and drop CAD details in as well. So from here, let me go ahead and just hit export. I'm going to choose everything in this case, and I'm going to stick this in my downloads folder as an example. After that exports, and we'll just go open up my downloads page. And here we go. There's that example file, okay? Now I want you to note something. When we double click this, this will import this into Chief Architect. What I want you to know is this is a conflicted copy now. This is an overwrite. When we exported the example file from Project Browser, here's what I would suggest you do. I would suggest you delete it from that, okay? The reason I say delete it is because it is now considered, if someone else is going to work on this project, it's now considered a previous copy. It's no longer the active copy. If you want to keep it just for your archives, that might be something. Or if you're just kind of transferring a copy over to another machine, just know you're working on two completely separate copies. The two do not communicate with each other. It's now what I consider a dumb copy. So just keep that in mind. When you export it, consider deleting from your machine. And then if you were going to go work on this project again, all you would do is double click on this, and it's going to bring it into Chief Architect. Let this happen real quick. And see, it already picks up that there's a test project in here. So it's going to add it's going to append a suffix there. That's what's going to happen. Okay. Now it's asking me if I want to open a file. You can just hit close because it's still over here in the project browser, right? But notice now these are two completely separate conflicted copies. Now, instead of deleting it, if you want to consider a different workflow, let's just say that I sent that test project out to a colleague. They went and worked on it. I didn't work on my copy. They saved it back, and now I want to see what they did, and I want to bring it into the folder. I can just bring this in to my test project. Now I have a conflicted copy here. You're going to want to make sure that you're renaming this, right? You want to make sure that you've got some new name for this for it to understand. So this operation will move the selected items and the items linked to or from them. Keep in mind, it's bringing forward everything that was linked and referenced, okay? So this can cause a lot of problems. 4 items with the same name already exist in this destination. Are you sure you want to move these items? You can see this can get really, really complicated. So now it's listing those 4 items. I should have renamed them before I brought them in so that I created some kind of versioning. Keep in mind, something that's a big benefit in the CAproject workflow here is that we get to rename our plan files and it's still going to retain its link. It says already established. It will pick up any kind of renaming of files. So you just need to know, if you did what I just did, that these things kind of place their copy behind the original copy. So what I'm thinking here is that I'm going to say that this is from my other person here, right? So this is their version. I'm going to put their initials or something like that. So this is one way of managing versioning. Here's what I really think you should do is when you go to delete, believe it or not, I know that's a scary word, we do get the option to export and delete. And so there's your opportunity to export your project, get it off of your machine, and know that your active copy is on your machine somewhere where you might be syncing it to the cloud. Now, while that's deleting, I just want to show you on the folder side of things what this CAproject file even does. It's really just a clever container of what we did before with backups, which was we backed up with referenced files, including all of those texture files. So what happens for the other end user is when we open this, and I'm going to show you this, I'm going to open this with a extractor utility, okay? And all this is a clever little container for a zip folder. All right, so if I get over here, look at that. This includes assets. Assets are going to be all my material files, which is why the file size is so huge. It's got all those textures in it. And then it's projects. And within project, here you go. Here's all these individual files. So if you needed to just extract something from this, you can. You can just drag and drop this off the screen from something like WinZip or some kind of zip utility. We just get to drag and drop this off the machine on to somewhere else, and that is extracting it effectively. So just keep that in mind. This is just an archive. What's nice about this is that it's got that CAproject container so that when we open it on Chief Architect side, it recognizes that it has assets that it can then import into the new machine. And all that's doing is it's bringing it into the directory where Chief knows that it's managing your assets. And so it knows how to pull up those material files when someone on a different machine gets to open that up. So if you're unfamiliar, in the tools section of the top menu items here, Asset Manager is where we'll find all of our texture files. Now, hopefully, you're not coming at this in the way that I had to come at this, which is that I was kind of loose with my texture names when I created all my conventions, and I've got many different texture naming conventions over the years, and so it's really hard to find files in Asset Manager by name. So I'm just kind of coming up with ways to get around that and rename things so that I can find things like, hey, maybe I just want a Perlin noise map, and so that would be easy to find. Speaking of searching, we can obviously just go into the sidebar for filters and search here as well. And so I'm just going to search for the new plan, and there we go. This lists all the new plan copies that I've made before. So you can use the search bar to look through your browser. That part's really, really nice. I think accessing projects is really fast and really easy with this method. So keep that in mind. And then I'm going to touch on one more thing. There's a backup file that's being made. I kind of skipped over that, but in project management, there is a section that is backup managed resources. And so this will do a daily backup if you want, or you can even set this to an hourly backup if you want. Now, if you go look at these backups, again, all this is an archive, and it's of all of those, your projects, your assets, your library, everything's in there. So if you're comfortable with that, set your backup to go to your cloud service, and that way, depending on your level of risk tolerance, if you lose something, it's easy to go into the backup. You could restore the complete machine, or you could just extract some of the files that are within it, which means that if I did a backup right now, that test project that I haven't deleted yet would be in that backup, and I could extract it and get the last version from it. So 2 different locations we could go find our files in case we miss them. So you could set your archive file to be to some kind of cloud directory, and you can set your backup file to be to some kind of cloud directory. Other than that, I think you're going to be exporting a CAproject file to someone else in the company. I'd say remove it from Project Browser. That's just my method. Let them work on it. They're going to then export it and remove it from their project browser, either create a hierarchy from your exports or just overwrite the existing. That's up to you. I create a hierarchy so that I know old versions, old design iterations. And then the other thing that you can do, and keep this in mind, this is a nice workflow, is within your plan here in my test project, you can create versioning within here. So come up with your naming convention, come up with your folder structure, and you can create versioning so that when you export your CAproject file, maybe you have different design versions in there as well, including different design versions in layout if you want. So you could do a fully contained folder that has layout plan, and that's design A, but it's still inside of your active project. That's all I'll touch today. Hopefully that covered a lot of ground. Good luck. Leave me comments. Let me know what questions you have. I've got solutions. There's a lot more to talk about here, but I'm going to kind of keep it for the official release of X17.